Have you ever had that uneasy feeling in your gut? The one that whispers something's wrong, but you try to ignore it because you love the person too much to believe it. That's exactly how Ethan felt during the last few months of his relationship. He wasn't some jealous guy, not the paranoid type. He was the quiet, loyal kind, the kind who believes that if you love someone, you hold on even when things get tough. But sometimes, holding on just means giving someone more time to betray you. Ethan had been with Maya for almost 3 years. They lived together, shared bills, meals, and what he thought was a future. Things used to be great. Late-night drives, lazy Sunday mornings, plans about marriage and kids. But lately, those things had turned into arguments about nothing, cold silences, and that invisible wall that grows between two people who've stopped being honest with each other. He worked long hours as a field technician. Hard work, decent pay, nothing fancy. Maya was still trying to find herself, jumping from one part-time job to another. Most of the bills came from his pocket, but he didn't complain. He thought love meant patience. Until one Friday evening, she came home, dropped her bag, and said she needed a break. Not a breakup, a break. She said she wanted to visit her family about 600 kilometers away for a week, clear her mind, and maybe come back refreshed. Her tone was soft, her eyes steady, like she'd rehearsed it. Ethan felt uneasy but said nothing. Instead, he helped her pack, gave her gas money, and kissed her on the forehead when she left. She smiled and said, "You're the best, Ethan." That was the last time he saw her for a while. The first few days alone weren't easy. He came home to an empty apartment that still smelled like her perfume. Her coffee mug sat in the sink, her shoes by the door. He told himself it was temporary, that she just needed space. But as the days passed, something started to feel off. She didn't text much. No, I miss you. No late-night calls. Just short replies and excuses about being too busy with family stuff. On the 5th day, Ethan's world cracked open. It was lunchtime at work. He was scrolling through social media, trying to distract himself, when he saw it. A photo that made his stomach drop. Maya was sitting on a sunny restaurant patio, drink in hand, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. But it wasn't the smile that hurt. It was the man sitting across from her. Her ex or Ethan froze. He zoomed in on the photo, hoping maybe it wasn't her. But it was. The same bracelet he'd given her on her birthday, the same tattoo on her wrist. She wasn't 600 kilometers away. She was right there in the same city, having lunch with her ex like their relationship never existed. His chest tightened. His vision blurred for a moment. He wanted to scream, throw something, anything. But instead, he just stared. Then he took a screenshot. And another, and another. Every angle, every tag, every comment. He wasn't going to confront her right away. Not yet. Not until he knew exactly what to do. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat on the couch, staring into the dark, thinking about everything. Every lie, every excuse, every "I love you" that suddenly felt fake. But the longer he sat there, the quieter his anger became. It wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. Cold, sharp, surgical clarity. Maya wasn't on the lease. The apartment was his. He paid the rent. The agreement was month to month, requiring a 60-day notice. And in that moment, a plan started forming. Not out of hatred, but out of justice. The next morning, Ethan emailed his landlord, Mark, a decent guy in his 50s who'd always liked Ethan for being responsible and quiet. The message was simple. "Hi Mark, I'd like to give my 60-day notice to vacate. Please let me know the next steps." Mark replied within the hour. "Got it, Ethan. No problem. If you need anything or want me to keep this private for now, I can." That was the moment Ethan smiled for the first time in days. The plan was in motion. Over the next week, he found a new place, smaller but clean, close to work, and his alone. Then, he started preparing for the quietest, most satisfying revenge possible. When Maya came back, she was glowing. Acting like nothing had happened, she hugged him, kissed him, and said, "It was so nice seeing everyone again." He just smiled and said, "I'm glad you had a good trip." Not a word about the photo, not a hint that he knew, just calm, polite indifference. That calm scared her more than yelling ever could, because when someone expects drama but gets silence, it means the storm is still coming. They just don't know when. The following weeks were strange. Maya was distant, yes, but also restless. She started staying out late, coming home past midnight with half-baked excuses about drinks with co-workers, or crashing at a friend's place. Ethan would look up from his laptop, nod and say one word, "Okay," nothing more. He wasn't even pretending to care anymore. Behind the scenes, he and the landlord were coordinating everything. When Maya was out, potential tenants came to view the apartment. Ethan packed small boxes, things she wouldn't notice missing. Important papers, old photos, books, tools, personal stuff. Bit by bit, he was erasing himself from the place they'd once shared. He stopped leaving his toothbrush in the bathroom. He cleared half the closet. He took down their framed pictures and replaced them with empty hooks. But Maya never noticed. She was too wrapped up in her own lies. At one point, she suggested they take another trip together. Ethan smiled and said, "Maybe soon." Inside, he was laughing, not out of cruelty, but because she had no idea she was living on borrowed time. Every night, Ethan would sit quietly in bed, watching her scroll through her phone, probably texting her ex. He'd stare at her and think, "You have no idea what's coming." And that thought didn't make him bitter. It made him calm, peaceful. He was finally in control again. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about dignity, about walking away without saying a word and letting your silence do all the talking. The days rolled by. Maya's lies got bolder, her stories thinner. She'd come home smelling like someone else's cologne, her excuses crumbling as fast as her respect for him. But Ethan just nodded, smiled, and let her think she was winning, because the sweetest revenge is patience. By the time the move-out day was less than a week away, everything was set. The landlord had new tenants lined up, and Ethan had arranged a moving crew to come early in the morning while Maya was home, because some lessons hit harder when you witness them in real time. He didn't plan to argue. He didn't plan to humiliate her publicly. He just wanted her to realize, in one moment, how completely she'd lost. Every lie, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect was about to come crashing down. And Ethan, he would walk away without raising his voice. Because sometimes the coldest revenge isn't screaming, or breaking things, or seeking validation. Sometimes it's the quiet sound of a man packing boxes while the person who betrayed him stands there realizing she has nowhere left to go. That morning was coming, and Ethan was ready. The morning finally arrived, quiet, grey, and heavy with the kind of silence that only happens right before everything changes. Ethan was up before sunrise, standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, staring at the walls that had once felt like home. Today, those walls would witness the final act of his calm, calculated revenge. The movers were scheduled to arrive at 8 a.m., sharp. Every detail was timed like clockwork. Maya was still asleep, tangled in the sheets, her phone face down on the nightstand. He could hear her soft, careless breathing, the sound of someone who thought the world was still safely hers. Ethan finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, and placed it neatly in a box labelled kitchen. He checked his watch. 7:58, 2 minutes. Right on cue, there was a knock at the door, firm, professional, final. Ethan opened it to find 3 movers in uniform, ready to work. "Morning, sir. You Ethan?" the lead guy asked. Ethan nodded. "That's me. Everything's ready to go. Just start boxing the furniture and loading up." The men nodded and went straight to work. The sound of tape ripping, boxes sliding, and furniture shifting filled the apartment. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, methodical. The kind of sound that wakes curiosity, and sure enough, a few minutes later, Maya's sleepy voice echoed from the hallway. "Ethan, what's going on?" He didn't answer right away. He just kept folding the last of his clothes into a box. She appeared in the doorway, wearing one of his shirts, the irony almost poetic. Her hair messy, eyes still foggy from sleep. She blinked, confused. "Why are there movers here?" Ethan turned slowly, calm as ever. "We're moving out," her eyebrows shot up. "We're moving? What do you mean, we?" He smiled, small but deliberate. "Actually, correction, I'm moving." For a moment, she just stood there, processing. Then her face twisted with forced laughter. "Wait, what? Are you serious right now? Why?" He reached into a folder on the table and pulled out a small stack of photos. He placed them gently in her hands. "You tell me," the colour drained from her face. She looked down at the photos. Clear as day. There she was, sitting at that restaurant patio, smiling at her ex, holding his hand across the table. Picture after picture. Different angles, different moments, all from the same day she claimed she was visiting her family. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Ethan, it's not what it looks like." He raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Because it looks like you lied about a 600-kilometer trip just to meet your ex for lunch. And that's just the part I caught, she stammered, shaking her head. It was just one time, I swear. It didn't mean anything. Ethan cut her off, voice low but steady. You don't have to explain. You already did what you wanted to do. And now, I'm doing what I need to do. She looked around as the movers carried boxes past her, loading them onto a dolly. Ethan, please, can we just talk? You can't just leave, he shrugged, calm as ever. Actually, I can. The lease is in my name. I gave notice weeks ago. New tenants move in 2 days. Her mouth fell open. What? Before she could react, a knock sounded again at the door. This time, it was the landlord, Mark. He stepped in, greeting Ethan with a nod. Morning, Ethan. Everything going smoothly? Perfectly, Ethan replied. Then Mark turned to Maya, his expression polite but firm. Hi there. I just wanted to let you know you'll need to have your things out by midnight. The place needs to be cleaned for the new renters. Maya blinked rapidly, still trying to process everything. Wait, what do you mean my things? I live here. Mark sighed gently, shaking his head. Sorry, ma'am, but you're not on the lease. Legally, you have until midnight to clear out your belongings. Anything left after that will have to be disposed of. Maya turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. Ethan, you can't do this to me. He looked at her, not angry, not smug, just calm, almost detached. You already did this to yourself, Maya. I'm just finishing the cleanup. She took a step forward, tears forming in her eyes. I made a mistake, okay? But this is too much. Ethan set down the box he was holding and faced her directly. You made a choice, and now you're living with it. I'm not angry anymore, Maya. I'm done. That's all. The movers continued working around them, almost like background noise to the slow collapse happening in that room. Maya stood frozen as her world literally packed itself away. Piece by piece, box by box. The bed frame, the couch, the TV, the lamps, every single item belonged to Ethan. All that remained of her life in that apartment were her clothes, her makeup, and a few personal items. She sank down onto the floor, staring at the photos again, her hands shaking. You really planned all of this? Ethan nodded once. From the day I found out, her voice cracked. You've been pretending this whole time, he shrugged lightly. Pretending? No. Accepting reality, yes. You were gone long before you packed your suitcase. The silence that followed was brutal, the kind that hums in your ears. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to hold herself together, but every breath sounded heavier than the last. The movers finished loading the last of Ethan's furniture, closing the truck doors with a metallic thud that felt like the end of a chapter. Ethan signed the final paper, thanked them, and turned back to her one last time. Mark will lock up tonight, he said quietly. Anything you want to keep, take it before midnight. She just stared, tears streaming down her face. Please, Ethan, don't go. We can fix this. He tilted his head, studying her for a moment. Then, with a soft but final tone, he said, You can't fix something you destroyed on purpose. He walked to the door, paused, and took one last photo on his phone. The moment seared in time. Maya sitting on the floor, surrounded by a small pile of clothes and toiletries, the apartment bare and echoing. The same place that once held laughter and love now held only silence and regret. He slipped his phone into his pocket, opened the door, and stepped out without looking back. The hallway outside was bright, almost peaceful. As he walked to his car, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not joy, not vengeance, just peace. He wasn't leaving out of spite. He was leaving because he'd finally accepted that some people don't deserve closure. Inside the apartment, Maya sat in the middle of the empty living room, hugging her knees, staring at the door that would never open for her again. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound left. The quiet after the storm. Later that evening, when the landlord returned to check in, she was still there, surrounded by a few garbage bags filled with her clothes and makeup, trying to make calls, looking lost. Mark was kind but firm. You really should start packing. The cleaners come tomorrow morning. She nodded weakly, wiping her eyes, but deep down she knew there was nothing left to save. Meanwhile, Ethan was already settling into his new place, a small one-bedroom apartment with no memories, no ghosts, no lies. He unpacked slowly, humming to himself, each box he opened feeling like a layer of weight lifting off his chest. At one point, his phone buzzed, a message from Maya, just 2 words. I'm sorry. He stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. No reply. Some words don't deserve answers. He sat down on his new couch, the evening sunlight spilling through the blinds, and let out a deep, cleansing breath. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure, about choosing self-respect over chaos. His phone buzzed again, another text, then another. Apologies, excuses, please. He didn't read them. He just turned the phone over, face down, and stared at the empty wall in front of him. For the first time in years, the silence felt good, peaceful, free. Back at the old apartment, Maya's midnight deadline came and went. When the clock struck 12, Mark locked the door behind him and turned off the lights. Whatever she hadn't taken was now gone, just like the man who once loved her. The days that followed were strangely quiet for Ethan, not empty, but peaceful. He didn't realize how much noise she had brought into his life until it was finally gone. The constant suspicion, the tension, the fake apologies, the half-hearted affection, all of it had vanished with her voice. His new apartment smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. The walls didn't whisper reminders of lies, and the air didn't carry the weight of unspoken resentment. He started going for morning walks again, something he hadn't done in years. The first few mornings felt surreal. Sunlight breaking through the trees, the sound of birds instead of arguments, the feeling of being free without needing to explain it to anyone. He'd stop at the corner cafe, grab a cup of black coffee, and sit by the window, watching people go about their lives. No drama, no guilt, just quiet. Every now and then, his phone would buzz with another message from Maya. Long paragraphs filled with regret, excuses, half-truths disguised as apologies. She said she was sorry, that she missed him, that she made a mistake, that she wasn't herself. At first he read them, not out of curiosity, out of closure. He wanted to see if she understood the damage she'd done. But every message had the same pattern, sorrow followed by justification. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. Can't we start over? Eventually he stopped reading. He blocked her number, deleted the old photos, and even changed his email. Not out of spite, but because he finally accepted that some people only reach out when their comfort disappears, not when their conscience wakes up. One evening, he was unpacking a box of old photos and came across one that made him pause. It was from their first trip together, the two of them smiling at the beach, wind in their hair, pure and innocent before the lies crept in. For a brief moment he felt that old ache, not for her, but for the person he used to be, before he learned what betrayal truly felt like. He slipped the photo back into the box, closed it and whispered to himself, "That version of me is gone." Meanwhile, word got around among their mutual friends. Some sided with him, others stayed neutral, and a few tried to play peacemakers. The classic, maybe you two just need to talk types. But he didn't entertain it. There was nothing left to talk about. He'd already said everything by walking away silently. One of his closest friends, Daniel, came by one afternoon with a six-pack of beer and a smirk. "Dude, you're a legend," he said, sitting down on the couch. "You didn't just break up. You pulled a full-on tactical extraction." Ethan chuckled. "It wasn't about payback, man. I just didn't want to become like her. Bitter, angry, messy. I wanted peace." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, but come on, admit it." Watching her face when the movers came had to feel good. Ethan smiled slightly. "It did. But not because I hurt her. Because I finally stopped hurting myself." That line stuck with Daniel. He just nodded, lifting his beer in quiet respect. Weeks turned into months. Life moved forward. Ethan focused on work, reconnected with old friends, started taking better care of himself. He even began volunteering on weekends, helping at a local animal shelter, something he'd always wanted to do but never had time for because his energy had always gone into fixing someone who didn't want to be fixed. And then, one afternoon, while he was walking through the park, he saw her again, Maya. She was sitting alone on a bench, her hair shorter, her expression softer but tired. She looked up, and their eyes met for a moment. It wasn't dramatic. No music, no rush of emotion, no confrontation. Just two people who once shared a life, now strangers passing through time. She offered a faint, almost broken smile. "Hey, Ethan," he nodded politely. "Hey." There was a pause, that kind of heavy silence where the past tries to speak but the present refuses to listen. "I heard you moved on," she said quietly. "You look happy," he shrugged gently. "I am." She looked down, picking at her sleeve. "I never meant to hurt you." I just got lost, he nodded, his voice calm and firm. I know, but sometimes getting lost means you lose people who would have stayed forever if you'd just been honest. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. For once, she had nothing left to say. He glanced toward the park exit. Take care, Maya. And with that, he walked away. No dramatic goodbye, no lingering regret, just quiet closure. As he reached the other side of the park, he felt lighter. Not because he saw her, but because he realized he felt absolutely nothing. The love, the pain, the anger, all gone. What remained was strength. That night, he sat on his balcony, watching the city lights flicker below, the cool breeze brushing against his face. He took a deep breath and thought about everything. How easily trust can be broken, how silence can be louder than shouting, and how walking away sometimes screams louder than revenge ever could. He raised his glass toward the skyline, as if to toast the lesson life had forced him to learn. Sometimes peace isn't given to you. You have to take it back. From that day forward, Ethan promised himself one thing. Never again would he let someone's lies define his worth. Love should never feel like walking on broken glass. He didn't check her social media. He didn't ask friends about her. He didn't care if she was sorry. Because the truth was, revenge wasn't the point anymore. Growth was, and that, in the end, was his real victory. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Ethan packed up his camera and drove out of the city. He'd started traveling again, taking pictures of places he'd always wanted to see. Mountains, lakes, quiet little towns that didn't care who you were or what you'd been through. And every photo he took carried a piece of his new life, one built not on pain, but on purpose. In one shot, there's Ethan standing by a cliffside at sunrise, camera in hand, wind in his hair, peace in his eyes. A man who'd been betrayed but refused to break. A man who'd been lied to but refused to live in bitterness. A man who understood that sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't watching someone fall apart. It's rebuilding yourself so completely that they no longer exist in your story. And as the camera shutter clicked, that moment, that sunrise, marked not the end of a painful chapter, but the start of a better one. Because in the end, Ethan didn't just make her homeless. He made himself free.